Good evening, everybody, and welcome inside the Upon Further Review podcast for this Wednesday night. We're recapping of week 4 in high school football across Northeast Indiana and looking ahead to week 5 this week. Joining me tonight is the coach, Shannon Griffith. I'm Eric Dutkiewicz, better known as Doot. And Coach, we were out a wild Friday night just across the board. There were so many great games. We couldn't be at all of them. We were at Carroll and Dwenger out at Carroll Stadium, but Carroll Dwenger, a great game. We had a great game out at Leo with New Haven. We had some good ones in the ACAC with Heritage beating South Adams. Bluffton rolls to another win. Some high quality games across the area that really made it tough to really call a game of the week, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, we're getting in that time of year where teams are starting to come into their own. You're getting a lot of teams now that are starting to either separate themselves or waiting for the other shoe to drop, in the sense that maybe they've lost a game and they have to hope that somebody beats somebody so that they can get back in it. We were at the Dwenger and Carroll game, which, was a lot closer than the score indicated. From the standpoint of, it was a tight ball game up through the first half, and then it kind of got away from Dwenger late in the game, which I would assume Carroll's athleticism took over a little bit. Jimmy Sullivan got hot at the right time. But what Dwenger did that was really good in that ball game was they just decided that they were going to run the football, but they were going to attack Carroll right down the middle. And that's the best way to go at this type of defense that's got speed, because you're not going to run around them. So I really like Dwenger's game plan for the most part, and try not to put Springer in a situation where he had to make throws that maybe he wasn't capable of. They had a block punt that set up Carroll's really score the game. And, so, yeah, it was a matter of turnovers and some special team miscues that really led to Dwenger's demise on Friday night. Carroll, again, they've got to find a running game. It's just not consistent enough right now with the guys up front, and they were having trouble with that part of their game with Starks and things of that magnitude. I just hope that we coming into this game Friday against Snider, Carroll is going to have to find ways to run the ball enough in order to keep Snider guessing, because Snider's such a good defense that they can do a lot of things and put yourself in a bind. And if they can't run the ball with some effectiveness, it could be a long night for Carroll.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought what was key to that, especially that first half of that Dwenger Carroll game, was the fact that, really, I think Dwenger tried to come out and run the ball, eat that clock, keep Jimmy Sullivan, keep Hanson Hafner on the sideline, that high potent offense, and it worked for a while. Yeah. I mean, it became a field position game very early on. And then, of course, in the second half, Dwenger pulls away. Jimmy Sullivan, 18 for 31 with 298 yards and 3 touchdowns. All 3 to Hanson Hafner, who caught 10 passes for 190 yards. So that connection is really developed into a strong one for the Carroll Chargers there. And I think for Dwenger, on the Dwenger side of things, they never could really get that offense going beyond that 3 yards in a cloud of dust, even though it's turf, so it really wasn't that dusty. But a credit to the Dwenger defense, right. The Carroll defense as well, in the sense that, they were getting in the backfield, they were getting those short stops, the pressuring, as was Dwenger too. And it really highlighted both teams' defenses early on, and then ultimately Carroll was able to put it on in the third and fourth quarters and pull away with the 40-13 win.
Yeah. And that's what I meant by the score not really being indicative of the closeness of that game. It was 10-6 at halftime. Yeah. Carroll got the big block punt that gave them a short field, and that led to that first touchdown. But other than that, for the most part of that first half, Dwenger really controlled with their running game, and Tippmann and crew really did a nice job. Their offensive line did a nice job. I thought they had a really good sound game plan. Like you said, eat the clock, keep Carroll's offense on the sideline as much as humanly possible. But when their defense came out, Dwenger's defense, that is, they got after Carroll. And Carroll really had struggled to run the ball for the better part of the first half. And they had to, throw the ball a little bit more. And, you give Jimmy Sullivan the time that he got in a couple instances on Friday, he's just too good to give him that amount of time to sit back there and survey the scenario and really throw some great passes. The one touchdown pass that he threw to Van Pelt that got taken off the board because of a penalty. And that's the other thing that's hurting Carroll, is timely penalties are hurting them offensively. They took points off the board, but it was a great throw by Jimmy, and it was a great catch by Van Pelt, but it come off the board, and then they got a sack, and then next thing you know, they got points taken off the board, and they got nothing out of that drive. So, yeah, I thought Dwenger did what they needed to do. Unfortunately, in the second half, and that third and later I'd say the last part of the third and most of the fourth quarter, that's when Carroll kind of took control.
Yeah, absolutely. And the defensive side, we'd mentioned it, just the big pick six for Lentz from Carroll. And really too, I mean, Carroll's offense, 307 yards passing, only 37 rushing yards. And you alluded to that, Coach. Like, that's where you start to, the head scratcher, the cause for concern, if you will. Here we are halfway through the season. We haven't seen that significant breakthrough for the rushing attack for Carroll. Starks 35 yards, Steely 14. Of course, Sullivan's -12 in there, partly because of the sacks and stuff. That goes towards the rushing total. So ultimately, if you take that aspect out of it, you're looking at 49, 50 yards of rushing. So under 50 yards of rushing for Carroll, and really consistently all year, it hasn't been something. But I think also we know from the Carroll perspective, they're going to throw the ball down the field. They've got playmakers that can get open in space. Hanson Hafner has become that guy for them. And there's just so many different options there. And then they do rely on the defense. So it's one of those things where they know they're going to get extra possessions, and so they can kind of take those chances through the air and wear down teams that way.
Absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to point out too, I wanted to give Dwenger credit. They had a block. I think it was a field goal that went for a touchdown. They had that scoop and score that really turned the game on its ear there in the mid of the third quarter. And then Carroll got a couple quick ones on them, and Lentz got that interception for a touchdown, and that ultimately led and sprung their way to that victory. But the running game, they're going to have to look to find ways, I think, to put Steely in the game. I just think they need his ability as a running back. He's a big, strong kid. Starks is quick. Take nothing away from that kid. He's quick and he can fast. But right now, they're just hurting to get a couple yards rushing, and Starks jamming it up in the inside all the time isn't the answer. So I think they're going to have to find ways to put Steely in positions in normal offense, not their traditional, put three guys back there, just the traditional one back offense, and find ways to get him the ball.
Yeah, especially with Snider coming up this week. And that kind of leads us to our, just real quick, to look at the SAC standings heading into this week and coming out of that. And we'll move on with some of what we have coming up on this show. Carroll, Homestead, Snider, all 2-0 now in the A division. And then Dwenger falls to 1-1. Lures is the lone unbeaten in the B division. Now, it's important to know, Coach, and we can maybe talk about this a little bit later in the show, but keep in mind, It is the overall record in the SAC games. All the SAC games count. The divisions are basically inconsequential,
Right.
For lack of a better way of saying it. Basically, the agreement was this group of 5 were going to be in one pod, and the other 5 were going to be in the other. They were always going to play each other if you're kind of in that division, and then you have these kind of crossover games. But just talking to some of the athletic directors in the area, I think the division idea, the crossover games, the intra-division stuff, I don't even think that was originally part of the plan and discussion. And then I think it just publicly kind of became this thing. I know the press release had mentioned it, but long story short, it's the overall most wins in the conference. So, and in a case of, if you have the similar teams with the similar record in separate divisions, if they did not meet head to head, there is a potential for co-champions. So just to clear up some of the talk and confusion in the past week, but it was an interesting Friday night. There was a lot of other games, Coach, going on with New Haven Leo, which we'll talk to later, just about that. Another one, Heritage, getting a big win over South Adams and all of that. And they're on to 4-0 for the first time since, I think, 2006. And that's in head coach Kasey Kolkum will join us here momentarily from the Heritage Patriots. But Coach, that's a pretty impressive what they've been able to do the last year or so, this Heritage team, putting themselves into big spots.
Well, yeah, and Kasey's been building the program now, and he's got kids in there that he's had these hands on for the last 3 years. And I think the fruits of his labor are starting to bear the fruit that he intended. And he's got a really good team, and they had a good team last year. They've got the numbers in the program. They're getting kids reps through their freshman and JV, program. And now it's paying dividends for them once they get to that varsity level. They've got a well-developed kid stepping on that field.
Yeah, absolutely. So he'll be joining us here momentarily. We also, later on in the show, will be joined by New Haven head coach Kyle Booher. The Bulldogs with a huge overtime victory over Leo, and probably the game of the night, the game of the year so far in all of Northeast Indiana, with the way that shaked out. We'll talk to him a little bit more. But first, I think Coach Kolkum is ready for us, Coach Griff. And are you ready? We can bring him on now and add him to the conversation. Joining us now, Kasey Kolkum, the head coach of the Heritage Patriots. Coach Kolkum, first of all, thanks for joining us, and congratulations so far on the 4-0 mark in this 2023 season.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me on. Is my screen okay, or do I need to fix that?
It looks fine for the most part. If you've got a light maybe in your room overhead or that you could turn on just to lighten up, so we can see that face a little bit better for our video audience here. But
let me take the blur off. I think that might help.
That might help too a little bit. And so first of all, Coach, 4-0, first time since 2009 for this team. Really, it's, really good start defensively. Just so far, about basically halfway through the season now. Just where you assess your team as far as the growth that they've had really in the last year and over the summer.
Well, I think the emergence of Kobe at running back or at quarterback, I'm pretty much a running back, right? Has just really changed our offense. I mean, that's the style of offense we want to run anyways. But if your quarterback's not quite ready to take on that responsibility, and Kobe's made that progression now. And so, having that extra back in the backfield that's your quarterback, and you can still stay in, 10 or 11 personnel and not have to add a second back, just changes how the defense has to prepare for you. So that's probably been the biggest thing. We felt like we were going to be strong defensively coming into this year with the returners that we had, even with the loss of, with Whitaker. We felt like we had the pieces to be strong defensively. We didn't realize we'd be this strong. I think the varsity defense, the 2 touchdowns that South Adams scored were the first 2 we'd given up all year. The total yards are wrong on that. But
well, that was just just what I could pull from clips from the internet.
Right. I think South Adams had as many yards on us by far as anybody all season. I think they ended up right around 300 with a little over about 220 passing on 56 attempts.
So, yeah, they're not shy about throwing it. That's for sure.
Right. But, in high school, I mean, Waters an excellent high school quarterback, but still, to make a living throwing the ball in high school that's a tough living to make, So we were okay with that. We scrambled a little bit. We hadn't seen anything like that. I mean, I haven't seen anything like that since, I don't know if ever,
Yeah.
So we just kept him in front of us, and I think he completed 40% for the game. So we were okay with what happened.
Yeah, just some updates there on that aspect of it. Owen Warner, 21 of 56, 221 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's certainly one of the top passers in the area. And, Coach, you mentioned Kobe Meyer. Talk about, I mean, we kind of saw what he could do a little bit last year. He kind of came on the scene a little bit. But this year, 4 weeks in, he's really just kind of asserted himself as the guy, not just for your Heritage Patriots squad, but really, there again, across the area, a guy who can get it done through the air and on the ground. Just talk about his development, the work he's put on, and really how he's kind of seems to take the team upon his back.
Well, he wanted to be he threw his hat in the ring to be a team captain last year and didn't get enough votes. And so this year, he did it again, and he had by far enough votes to be a captain. So, and as you can see, I mean, his stats are for 4-game stretch. That's pretty impressive, even from what I've coached in the past. I mean, this is as good of a start in 4 games that I've been a part of. But Kobe's a very determined young man. He'll come in. He's a 3-sport kid, or at least he was. And during basketball season, he would come in the mornings, 6 a.m., 6:15. And get his lifts in. And so very committed to the weight room. As a freshman, he was a scrawny little under 150 pounds. And, now he plays around 170, 180. And most of that's just muscle mass that he's put on over the last few years, just committed to the weight room. He's not the tallest kid in the world, but he's a competitor. And when the lights come on Friday night is when Kobe's at his best. And truth be told, last week he wasn't feeling well. He was sick. He was still kind of feeling it. The day or two after you get over being sick, you're still not 100%. And that's how he played Friday night and still ran for, I think it was 160. So that's why the passing game was off a little bit Friday night against South Adams, because Kobe just didn't have the practice reps that he usually gets. But, yeah, impressive young man, great leader, great kid.
Well, you got, his statistics are darn near 50-50 when you look at it in terms of his attempts and carries, because they're only a differential of 10, but the yardage is 2 yards off. I mean, he's got 653 and 655, which is, I don't know if you can even try to do that and come out that way.
Right.
Plus, the other good thing that he's done is, of course, is that, he's only thrown 3 interceptions. I mean, that for a kid that's not been in the pocket as much as he has, that right there is pretty astonishing, that he's not doing things that a quarterback that maybe has not seen a lot of reps do. And that's one of the nice things about a kid like that, is he's giving you confidence on both sides of the coin. So in that regard, because of his ability to do the right things with the football. But you've got some other kids too. The Litchfield kid, I mean, I think he's averaging 250 yards in receptions this year. Is it Walter? Another kid that's got about 9 receptions on the year.
Yep. And to that, Shannon, Kobe doesn't really care. In high school you get kids that have certain connections and they're friends and they grow up together, and that's fine, but sometimes the quarterback may target that kid more even when he shouldn't. And Kobe's just not one of those guys, man. If you're open and you're in the progression, you're going to get the ball. And so when you look at our receiving stats, I mean, we have 6 or 7 guys that have between, 3 and 10 catches.
Yep.
And so, and it just so happens that Litchfield, it tends to be a bigger target. I mean, he's 6'5". He's a big kid, and kind of came on the scene when we had some injuries early. So we took the Washington kid and moved him out to receiver because we had injuries out there. And Devontae is another 6'4" tight end type kid, but he's a little, maybe just a little thinner than Zeke and a little, I wouldn't say more athletic, but better to play receiver for us. So really the only reason Litchfield's been on the field this season was because of injury. And now guys are getting healthy, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Because we're not moving Zeke from tight end. I mean, he's just been too good for us. So, yeah. And then Braden Walter is our starting free safety, and
right.
we two platoon. So he's one of those guys that's just dynamic enough that we've got to get him, reps on offense when the time calls for it, because he can do so much good for us. He's also our returner. He does our punting and kickoff returning. So, and the great thing is Zeke and Braden are both juniors.
Yeah, that makes it a lot easier in that regard when you got kids that are underclassmen that are doing these things. Before we let you go here, let's talk a little bit about your defense. I think that's the other side of the coin that maybe gets lost in the shuffle, because right now you guys are just hardly giving up any points.
Yeah, and that's a philosophy thing of, coaching defense is like this, right? It's, look, you can go up and down the field all day. I don't care. I mean, I care, but really the only thing that matters is, does the ball cross the goal line, So, we tell our kids that. And so I think it gives them, in a sense, some relief.
Sure.
We don't have to be perfect. We can give up a big play. We can give up big runs. We can give up 300 or 400 yards total offense. But really, at the end of the day, if they don't score, what's the harm? And that's really how Friday night played out with South Adams. You mentioned Kobe's interceptions. 2 of those were in the end zone Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And so in South Adams, when was able to throw the ball, and they had a 22-play drive in the second half. A 22-play drive, and they didn't score.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah. So, and our kids are gassed, and they're just trying to get off the field. And then when you think about it, you're like, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, sure, you want a 3 and out, but the fact that they used up all that time and all that energy and walked away with nothing.
Yeah, that's a dagger in their heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the big thing we preach. And then up front, we've just been really, really strong this year. Logan Teichman is a kind of a freak of a kid. He's 6'4", about 240, just runs lean. And then Charlie Riddle, who's strong as a house. Charlie's also about 6'3", and he plays at about 240.
Yeah.
And Charlie's a really accomplished thrower on the track team too. So, up front, we're strong, and you know how that goes in high school. If you have some linemen that can play, you can be successful. And we have other kids that are good as well, don't get me wrong, but it starts up front, and those kids do a great job.
Well, and the last thing that I will say here is this: the one thing that I've noticed out of your defense, and this is I always preached on defensive football, if you can be a gap sound and not give up the cheap score, you got a chance. And I don't see you guys giving up a cheap score.
Right.
And that's the key component. It's just like you said, they can go up and down the field all they want. Just don't give them the cheap score when you get out of gap and a kid splits you and goes 80 yards for a touchdown. It was because the guy missed an assignment. Those are the things that kill a defense. If you can play sound defense, gap sound, and not give up the cheap score, you got a chance. And I think that's one thing that you got to feel like your kids are doing for the most part.
100%. I mean, it's all about, what's your run fit, because it's still in high school. That's our number one focus. I mean, number one is don't let them score, but number 2 is rushing yards against. We just don't want people to run the ball on us, and so far this year we've been very successful at that. The big boy that Fairfield had at fullback that ran for 170 on Goshen ran for 22 on us. The Fleet kid from Woodland, I think, had 32 yards on us. Friday night, South Adams had maybe 70 yards rushing as a team, and Warner was the leading rusher.
Yeah.
So So now, okay, now we've been good up to this point. Now we really find out, right? Now we really find out, are we good against the run? Because AC runs the ball about as well as anybody in the state. And they do what they do. And so, it's a good test right now, week 5, and little conference implications on the line. And AC's been as good as there is around. And so this is what the boys have been talking about for the last few years, just to be in this position to be able to play a game like this is pretty cool, and regardless of the outcome, I sound like that's coach talk, I guess, but of course we want to win, but just to be in this position, I'm very, very proud of the boys. And it's a pretty cool thing to, kind of look back and just say, wow, we've made some progress in the last few years, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, Coach, we thank you for joining us here tonight, and good luck this week against the Flying Jets. And I know that you'll do your best to try to keep them grounded when you play again down at Adams Central. It's not like you're going to be unfamiliar territory having to go back 2 weeks in a row. But thanks again for joining us. Best of luck, and we'll see you down the road.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
That's Kasey Kolkum from Heritage High School. As his Patriots have just, really done a great job thus far. And, and there's another team in the area that's done, some similar things, and they've been there knocking on the door for the last couple of years. And our next guest here this evening is Coach Kyle Booher from New Haven High School, the Bulldogs, with a big overtime win on Friday night at Leo. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well. How about you guys?
Great.
Thanks for joining us.
Before I start in this, our one-on-one segment here with you, we had your DeKalb game 2 weeks ago, and I just wanted to compliment not only you, but even your offensive staff. The game plan that you guys had, I thought was as well executed of game plan that I have seen in a long while, where you guys use different formations, you use different, tactics in terms of running the ball with the power running game, the counter running game. It was just, I thought it was a well executed, well planned out offensive display that night.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We take a lot of pride in putting the work and getting our kids in the best position for them to do well. And we think there are different ways that they can do well, whether it's by formation, whether it's by scheme, giving them a good matchup. Whatever we can do to put them in a good position, we'll find a way to do it.
Well, I thought that game in itself was really well done. And, I think one of the things that in my opinion, that has led to where you're at, of course, having a Milan Graham on your team, a Power 5 kid, by all means a lot. But, it takes a guy at the quarterback spot that does the right things with the football. And if there's one thing that Donovan Williams has done this year, is the right things. Right now, he's only thrown, I think, 2 interceptions on the year, which is way down from a year ago. He's about almost, I think, around 78% completion percentage. It's almost night and day with that kid between what he was last year, when everybody knew the talent was there, to where he's at this year as it pertains to doing the right things with the football, whether it's eating it or throwing it away or just scrambling and getting positive yardage.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things we worked on, and we got him. And last year was late into the off season. He transferred over and got him in the district. I don't know, late July, before we started practice with him. So it really was just a night and day difference of his experience. Now he knows what to do, where to look for. That one of the biggest things we had to work with him is he tried to rely on his legs all the time and learning to throw the ball away. That was a huge piece that it took us a while to get him to do, because, when you're younger and
right,
had a lot of success at different levels, you can get away with your legs a lot. But as you get higher and higher into the play, you need to be able to be smart and do those things. And, one of the awesome parts, especially at that game, we were on the headsets and the quarterback coach was up top and he's talking, and he'd say, hey, he should check this play right now. Based on their alignment, he knows to check this play. And 2 seconds later, it's exactly what the quarterback coach said. And it was not time after time after time. I don't know how many times he did it. And it was 100%. Like whatever the quarterback coach said, he did it, and he was on target. And it was a great thing to see. You're like, hey, this guy's really understands football. He knows what he's doing and getting the ball where it needs to be.
Yeah, and outside of that, he's done well with running the football as well this year. I think he's your leading rusher, and of course Trey Bates adds a huge element into that mix as far as your running attack goes, and your utilization of the schemes that you have. I mean, it's got to be hard for defenses to prepare for you. On Friday night, it was an overtime game, 42-41. You guys had a lead, and they came back, and they've got some good players over there at Leo too. They got two big time players in Hurst and Scott. And tell me about this game, and just from the standpoint of, we weren't able to be there, and I'm not sure everybody was there, but I know Leo and New Haven people were there quite a bit. But give us a little insight on that ball game.
Oh, it was ups and downs all night. We actually started out with the second play from line of scrimmage, a 65-yard touchdown. Donovan again does a great job reading the defense, getting the ball out to Mylan, and Mylan takes off, and we do a pretty good job on defense, stuffing them down again, and then we get going, and before you know it, in the first quarter, it's 20-7. So we're rolling with it. This looks like that second play from scrimmage where Mylan gets that touchdown out there. The next drive we get it. Johnny gets the ball. We know they're going to be aggressive, attacking our bubbles and our short-term stuff, and so we throw one to a Johnny, and that sounds like this one's next. Our second score, yep. And so we set up. We knew that they would be coming aggressive. They're a good team, and so we had a Johnny go over the top of that, attack their aggression, and it was perfect setup. So, within the first couple of minutes, we're going wild, going crazy, getting a lot of points on the board. We do it again. We're running some RPOs that take advantage of, them being aggressive, and we, get the ball to the guys that are putting them in tough spots. And so we do some pretty good things there. But then they get a interception. They get some special teams plays, and they keep bringing themselves right back into it. So we keep like, okay, hey, we got some space, we got some breathing room, and we want to keep doing what we're doing. Don't have to, change stuff. And they always find an answer. They are a tough physical team, and they have, you say, that's some athletes. So, we thought at first, okay, we're in a good spot. We want to keep rolling. And they just found ways to eliminate that gap every time we did something. But I give it to our kids. We found ways not to give up, ways to keep fighting and keep going. Because there were a couple times with the momentum swing, it felt like it was just turning, and we didn't know if we were ever going to hold on to it or not. But as a staff, we stuck to it, held our kids, hey, you guys got this. We're going to get it together and finish this game. And they did a great job sticking with it. And so, in the overtime, we kept up, and they scored their last one pretty quick. They had a hook and ladder for a big play at the end, and then another drive to end up tying it up. But then the last 6 minutes, defense held strong, kept it, looked like they were going to score again. So in overtime, we had the ball first. We had a couple plays we ran before that were successful, and they snuffed them out. They figured it out. They coached it up well. So we're like, all right, well, if they're going to take this away, we got some more things coming for them, and scored. And they came out, ran it right down our throats to stop they scored pretty quick. But luckily we made the extra point, and they did not have such luck. So we ended up winning that 42-41.
Well, it sounded like a game, just how you explained it. A lot of different big time plays made by some big time players, and Hardy and Washington, and then of course Bates and his ability with 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Caden Hurst, what can you say about that kid? I mean, another kickoff return for a touchdown. I mean, we knew that going in, and our whole goal with our kicker is like, we were not kicking it to him, and
he came over to the sideline as soon as he kicked that ball, and he's like, Coach, I hit that ball so bad. That's not where it was supposed to go. And he knew that we didn't want him to have the ball because we just knew he was that good. He's just going to be tough to recover hard, and he found a way to get there.
Well, there's some good players in the NE8 this year, and I tell you, it may be one of the best years that I've seen from a talent perspective.
Yes.
And it's divvied up amongst 2 or 3, 3 or 4 teams. You got the Fuller kid at Columbia City. Of course, we've got the Leo kids and your kids. It's just a fun conference this year to watch. Because each and every week these kids are making a lot of plays.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you're right. I mean, you said Hurst is unbelievable talent, and we didn't really talk much about Shot, the tight end, and D lineman. He's great. Like, he ran, some of our fastest kids were trying to run him down, and he ran them away on that hook and ladder. Just left him in the dust. His speed within the size of him, he's just a tough mismatch that a lot of people are going to have trouble with. And, I haven't seen Fuller in person this year, but last year was just great, and he's breaking records. So you are right. I mean, we are stacked, and I think, the line, our line on both sides are getting tougher and tougher each year for all the groups. So, I mean, there's talent besides just the skills, but the skills are the ones that are really easy to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Kyle Booher joining us here from the New Haven Bulldogs, a big win on Friday night over Leo. Coach, when you have, we know about Mylan Graham, a Johnny Washington transferred over in the summer, James Hardy at tight end and defensive end, playing big on the defense. When you have these playmakers, particularly guys like a 5-star that's going to Ohio State, I mean, once in a lifetime kind of recruit that is on your team as a high school player, how does that affect you guys as a coaching staff, but then also the other kids around him? And how does that kind of just high tides raise all boats? And you certainly got a high tide with Mylan Graham and ultimately some of the other players on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a great job for us. He's one that we talk to, and I mean, we try to treat him just like anybody else in that sense. Like, you have the same expectations. You need to be here when everybody else does. You need to put the same work in. And we've never had a lot of issues with that. So he's been great there. But then the other thing is he's so ahead of everybody, like you said, in the athletics, but he's also ahead of them in the game on the field. I mean, as a freshman, he would come in and play some stuff for us. And by the time he was sophomore, he was sitting and reading zones and sitting in the hole before our quarterback was able to catch him. He's like, well, he wasn't where I thought he was. I was like, well, he sat and read the zone, and he was in the perfect spot. So we had to talk to Mylan about dialing it back and checking some things out. So his knowledge and his way that he can teach the kids as well is just as important as, his physical abilities and things there. And he's very good at taking directions when we talk to him. So one of the things, he's got to be an energy leader for our group. And if he's doing well and got the great energy, momentum, all those other pieces, the guys will follow that as well. So, one of the first times I told him, I said, hey, you got to set the tone for practice. You got to set it what it's going to be. And he did. He's like, okay, I got this. I'm going to step up. I'm going to have a good thing and get him energized. And so he listens to the words and the things you say. But that goes for a lot of those guys. All of them are in that same boat now. And that's, I think you see the difference in our team this year is, they're buying in, and they're more than buying in, they're believing. They're doing the things that we need to do. They're living it out, and they're really, playing for each other, working on those things, and really just trying to, keep holding each other accountable, but in a positive way. When I first came up here, you had different ways of holding accountability, and now, we really worked on teaching them just, hey, you're better than that. That effort, that work ethic you just showed, you're better than that. Get over here and compete with these guys and do the things the right way. And so, guys like Mylan being successful in doing it the right way helps, everybody else come along and move that. But Hardy, has been here all 4 years and is another great example, just does exactly what you coach. He works at it, knows what he's supposed to do, does a good job. You can go on and on. We've got, I think, 12 to 15 seniors that are just a great group that just really work their butts off, and it made a big change on turning, the program the direction it is.
Sure. The 4-0 start what was it about this year's group, that the time is here now where you're 4-0 start, first time in a couple of years. It's been a while since this has happened, but to kind of turn that corner, you've had those 5 consecutive years of 5 wins to be 4-0 now. What is it about this team this year? Obviously you've got the talent, but the work that they put in this summer to start off so hot for this season.
They've just decided they're going to work. They're going to work and put in the effort where, when we've been in the past before, we'd have guys that would quit in sprinting and conditioning, guys that didn't want to put the work in when we would do stuff in the off season. And this group made the commitment that said, hey, if you're not going to put in the work, then you don't need to be here. So they all got together. They all agreed. We have a leadership council that, we kind of have a couple in each grade, and they talk and work with us and figure things out that we want to talk about through the week if there's any issues with the program. But basically, as we talk to them, hey, this is your program. We're guiding the overall future, but on your team, what do you want it to look like? How hard are we, what do we need to do? What are your goals, and how are we as coaches going to help you get there? Which I really think helps them with the buy-in, but also they just do a really good job of pushing each other and holding each other accountable. Before in the program, kids would just kind of, oh, this guy didn't do anything, and let it get away. He'd go off to the corner, go do the side, do something else. They would let that get away. But now we have those seniors that say, hey, you're not living up to our expectations. You need to get to work. You need to get better. You need to get busy. And I think that's the biggest thing, is when the seniors step up and say, hey, this is not acceptable in our program. That's when you get the success that we've turned the corner and we're becoming a tough team, physically doing the things we want to do.
Sure. Well, it's been an interesting start to the year and a fun one to see. We like Coach Griffin mentioned, we saw you guys out when you played DeKalb a few weeks ago, and really good hospitality come out. John H. Young Stadium, a great place to watch a game. The sun is a little tricky, I gotta say, with the with the east to west stadium layout, but all in all, a great atmosphere out there. I know it was an exciting game last Friday night with the overtime win over Leo, and then ultimately for you guys, you move on to 4-0, looking for an NE8 crown later on this season. Norwell this week, Columbia City after that. For you, Coach, just real quickly, keeping the momentum of what you guys have, 5th in the state in scoring, just continuing that momentum in Class 4A. The next couple of weeks, just maintaining that now that you've kind of become the hunted in the NE8.
Hey, we'll do whatever we need to do, but our job is to just keep getting better. And that's kind of our message with the players is the only team we have to beat is the team we were last week. And when we do that and take care of being better than we were the week before, it kind of takes care of the rest of itself as we go. So, the numbers, the other things, they'll come. And as soon as the guys keep doing their job and continually, finding ways to get better, we just had some meetings as coaches, and there were plenty of things that we still didn't do right against Leo that we did right at other games. It's like, okay, we got to keep finding ways to get better and improve. And so every week beat the team we were last week. And that's what we focus on. So we'll take care of it. I mean, the next couple games are not going to be easy. Norwell's been physical, good solid squad. They moved the ball all over with Leo, and Columbia City, another undefeated team. So good. Yeah. We got competition coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we look forward to watching you the rest of the way. Exciting players, and I know an exciting season for you and your staff and your players, as well as the fans and alumni out at New Haven High School. And we thank you for joining us this week on Upon Further Review. Best of luck to you and the New Haven Bulldogs the rest of the season, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Kyle Booher, head coach of the New Haven Bulldogs, joining us tonight on Upon Further Review. And Coach, wow. Coach Griffith, that is, Shannon, a big they really turned a corner this season. And
absolutely,
it's obvious where that corner turned with the playmakers that they have on that field.
Well, I think the one interesting thing he said there, though, is you can be the best coach in the world. You can have all the answers. You can draw all the great plays and say this or that or whatever. But until the kids buy in and say, this is our team and we're going to do this, and they take accountability for that, both as a individual and as a team, that's the difference. That's the huge difference that Kyle mentioned there, is the ownership that the kids have taken in the program. And when you've got that, and you've got kids like a Mylan Graham and the Hardy and Donovan Williams and Trey Bates, and these kids are the example setters, and these kids that are around them and under them see them doing things that everyone's doing and no one's being treated differently. That's when you have buy-in. And when you have buy-in, sky's the limit. There's no obstacles that are going to take away from overly the objective. Now, they've got Norwell this week. Norwell's down, but then they've got Columbia City, and then they've got a Belmont, and they got East Noble. His hardest thing is going to be keeping his kids from peeking ahead and not thinking about, looking past the Norwell, and because they got Columbia City coming up, and they probably owe Columbia City, because Columbia City's got them in the playoffs the last couple of years. So, right now they're growing on all cylinders. If they can stay healthy, I like their chances. And I think they got a team that can make a lot of noise come postseason if they continue to do the things that they're doing.
Yeah, a really good start for them. And if you go back to last season, we talk about the 5 wins in 5 years, which last 5 seasons they've had. But that down the stretch, 3 wins, they lose the sectional first rounder, and now 4. So they have won 7 of their last 8 games dating back to last year. So not only are they red hot now, it's really, the off season was hot for them. The summer was hot for them. 7-on-7 was hot for them. I mean, everything is going, and the addition of Johnny Washington has just been monumental for them as well, because now, you kind of take some of that pressure off of Mylan from the sense of the double teams and all that. But
Absolutely.
A really good New Haven team. It's exciting to see that, because it's been a couple of years since they've been that dynamic top of the conference team in the NEA.
Right.
All right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I think the difference between being a 5-5 team and the potentially of being an undefeated 9-0 team, that difference about that much is buy-in. And that's what he's getting from his kids. They're buying in, and that's the complete difference right there.
Absolutely. Well, that was just one of another big games that we had across the area tonight. And Coach, and if we kind of look back at week 4 as a whole, particularly in the SAC, it was another interesting night of games. We didn't have the best slate of games from a competitive standpoint. I think, Carroll wins big. Snider wins big over Southside. Homestead rolls over Northrop. Northside, they get their first win. I think the 2 headlines probably are the Lures Wayne game, a 3-point game at Wayne, and then Northside getting in the win. Tay Johnson playing quarterback. Coach, you were a quarterback. You were a coach at college. Somebody like Tay Johnson or a Mylan Graham or anybody like that, when you have somebody on the roster that you can insert after a foot injury that kept him out all summer to play quarterback because you need a quarterback, what is that dynamic like when you have somebody of that caliber on your roster?
Well, my guess is at some point in time, Tay's played quarterback, that it's not a foreign position for him. Besides that, he's the best player on the field, bar none. And right now, Northside needed a shot in the arm where a kid like him could take over, because he can take over a game if you let him. There's many things that they can do with him. But he threw the ball well, from my understanding, outside of running the football. And that's what Northside needed at the moment, is that shot in the arm. And they did it at the right time against Concordia. So trying something like that against the Concordia team is probably the right time to do that in their eyes, because they were just reeling as a team. They just didn't have anything. So when you got the best player in the state in some respects. You're going to have to find ways to get him the ball, and he just felt it was the best way to get him the ball was snapping directly to him. And I have a tendency to believe that philosophy based upon, what they had struggled through the first 3 weeks, with inconsistency.
Yeah.
But, the Lures Wayne game, we talked about this in the pregame show, that now that Lures got rewarded and they got that, that monkey off their back, so to speak, now they become a team that's a little bit more dangerous now because they go over and they beat Wayne. They beat Wayne, who's a team that's has a lot of talent. And now, Coach Lindsey's got his Knights dialed in, and they're now a team that you have to kind of keep an eye on now, is because of what they've got in front of them. Because I think they play Concordia next. Lures does. Now that's going to be a good ball game. That won't be, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be a blowout, because I think they're pretty similar in stature and size and, competitiveness. But Lures getting that win at Northrop gave them the shot in the arm that they needed. And the rest of the night, Homestead did what they had to do. And that was what they needed to do. And then, of course, Snider essentially did what they needed to do. So you're right in the sense that we really didn't have a great slate of games, but we knew there were a couple games in there that could cause some problems. And unfortunately for the teams that we were talking about there on Friday night, those teams came through.
Yeah, and really, you got to play who's in front of you, and I think that's the dynamic of the SAC. Even now, with the splitting of the divisions, we'll call it that because that's what it is on paper. But Division A, Division B, there's a lot. Lures, like you mentioned, now they're on a hot streak. They're the only 2-0 team in the B division. They have an opportunity to maintain that undefeated record. I mean, theoretically, there are other games out there. It's just one of those things you have to look at everybody's schedule. But because they're not playing everybody, it's a different dynamic. And on top of it, they're proving to be probably the best team in this B division anyway, which we've seen now. That Lures Northside matchup in a few weeks will be interesting as well. But I think that's what's great about it is that there's hope for these teams, because the idea of the SAC split was to create more competitive games. And yes, we had Snider and Southside on Friday, and we had Carroll versus Southside the week before. And in that regard, you kind of feel sorry for the Archers, but at the same time, it is what it is. And in 2 years, Southside's not going to have to play Snider and Carroll. But I think, and the opposite side of that is too, Coach, Snider for 2 weeks in a row has played Concordia and Southside and basically sat their starters into the first quarter or into the, halfway through the second. When you're playing Carroll, and Carroll's played their starters against Dwenger all week long, the week before, that becomes an interesting dynamic too as we look ahead to week 5 a little bit.
Yeah, but I think in the sense that before I forget it here, Lures, they got Concordia this week. They go Northside, Dwenger, Southside.
Yeah.
So right there, is those 3 games, 4 games winnable games for them? As of right now, I'd say yes.
Yeah. That battle of the bishops.
And then they play Homestead the last game of the year. Yeah. So, there's a dynamic there where they don't play Snider and they don't
Carroll.
They don't play Carroll. So, they're potentially setting in the wings,
right,
of potential opportunity there going into that last week, especially of playing for maybe a tie in the SAC championship. But to your question, no, I just think Coach Tippmann's too good a coach to, even though they may have played him only a half or whatever that tally was for their first team and offense and defense. they're well equipped to come back and get themselves in a position to go play in a dogfight on Friday night against Carroll. And just like Doug and his staff are good staff, that they're going to solve the problems that they need to solve in order to give them a shot to beat Snider on Friday night. And again, you got a kid like Jimmy Sullivan can be a guy that can take over a game. Not only does he have the Hafner kid to throw to, he's got the Road kid who's a tight end. He's got the Van Pelt kid that's also a pretty good wide receiver. If they find ways to utilize Steely more in that game, maybe doing some wildcat stuff that they've done before, and maybe they just haven't showed it yet. These are all things that Doug will have at the ready Friday night to go against a very good Snider defense, as well as a Carroll defense that could cause problems for Snider, because they've got the talent, they've got the speed in the secondary and in the linebacking crew. The question is, can they line up and play, slobber knocker football like Dwenger did against them? And be able to stop a Buchanan and a Billingsley that can scramble around and do things. I think it's going to be a great game, no matter what. But that's kind of one of the top games in the area, as you said. And
looking at the rest of the slate here now, pulling up for the SAC. So I think better games this week, Coach, for sure. I mean, looking across the board, Homestead Dwenger. I mean, another big division matchup that. Yes, Dwenger took the loss to Carroll, but there's still so many games to play that Dwenger can respond with a beating Homestead, and then, Snider and Carroll game, you're going to get a loss out of that for one of those teams. And, there's still a lot of football to be played in a lot of different scenarios where, I mean, let's be honest, Dwenger is not out of this, and Homestead is sitting undefeated 2-0 in the SAC right now.
Yeah, and this is a big game for Homestead because of, playing a Dwenger team that has not always been a friendly foe in that regard. Dwenger's been one of those teams that can kind of give them fits, but Homestead goes Dwenger, Snider, Carroll. So they're going to have 3 straight weeks of some tough competition. They finish up with Concordia and Lures, like we talked about. But the Dwenger game is no slouch, and then they'll have to figure out ways to go up against the Snider and then a Carroll where, they're going to have to play very good. But you're right. There's some good games coming. I think the Concordia Lures game will be better than what maybe people think it might be. The Southside Wayne game now becomes intriguing because Wayne's lost 2 in a row. Southside may look at this. This is a good chance for us to get a W, especially against a team that is reeling a little bit. Northrop, Northside. Again, Northside's got to do it more than once to get me in the position of feeling like they're in the right mindset. And that's always has a tendency to be a pretty good ball game in that regard.
Absolutely.
So, you got these games, we got the NE 8 games that are coming up, like we said, and some of the contests that are coming up there. It's going to be interesting here as we get in the last few weeks. We will actually have the New Haven East Noble game in a couple weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But Columbia City's there again, kind of quietly going about their business. But I told you they struggled at first at Huntington North. It took them a while to get that game in hand. And, but they did. And that was a big win for them on the road. I'm trying to pull up their schedule here as we speak. Thanks, Max Preps. They go play DeKalb. I don't know DeKalb's scenario. East Noble beat them pretty handedly. I don't know if DeKalb had Lytle in that ball game or not. I really haven't dove into that one that much. But they go, Columbia City gets in their grinder now after DeKalb. Yep. They go New Haven, East Noble, Leo. Three games in a row where it's strap it up time. And you're getting to that part of the year now where weather could start becoming a factor. You got to be able to run the football, which they do quite well. So, I mean, Columbia City is far from out of the conversation, even though New Haven has kind of been on the rise.
Oh, yeah.
Columbia City's had their number too the last couple of years. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic. That game is actually at New Haven. So New Haven has that denominator there of playing a home game.
And I think part of that is the fact, Columbia City, number 7 in Class 4A, by the way. I think just because we've seen New Haven, DeKalb, we've seen New Haven, Leo, we're going to see New Haven, East Noble in a few weeks. Like, New Haven is kind of the talk of the town because the way their schedule is shaking out. You fast forward a couple weeks now, Columbia City all of a sudden becomes the spotlight on them because of their schedule as well. And they're, again, a team that has really rolled so far, averaging just under 49 points a game, giving up 12 on defense. One of the top statistical teams on both sides of the ball in the state of Indiana. So, they're the reigning NE8 champs as it is. And so I think, which was a great storybook run for them a year ago. And I think that would be another interesting thing to watch play out in a couple weeks. Columbia City at New Haven, this is the hard time of year too, where it becomes hard to decide what's the 1380 game of the week, Coach. But we do know what will be the 1380 game of the week this week. We're going to travel to Spooler Stadium. That's right. We're heading back to Spooler for the Carroll Chargers at Snider Panthers. A big SAC tilt. This could be maybe possibly the SAC championship. Like I said, lots of football to be played, lots of games, but certainly monumental implications and two very good teams between the Carroll Chargers and Snider Panthers. Kickoff at 7 on 1380 The Fan and 100.9. We'll be with the PSM High School Football pregame tailgate show with Jim Shovlin at 6. And then, of course, the post game, I believe, is at the Pine Valley Pizza Hut yet again, because Spooler Stadium is where Snider plays their home games and has for the last 60 years or 50 years. I guess that's when they built Northrop. But anyway, Coach, this is going to be a slobber knocker as well. Two very good defenses, two very clicking offenses. Something's got to give. And what do you think gives in this game? Is somebody who's going to be calling the game on Friday night. What are you be looking for?
Well, like I said earlier, if Carroll can find some semblance of a running game to keep Snider off guard a little bit defensively, then I think I think their chances are good. Being that I think that gives them a chance to not be one-dimensional, but it starts with them being able to have some type of running game. Snider's a well-balanced offense. They're going to have to contain Billingsley. I think the big thing on this game is not giving up any cheap scores or any special teams blunders, because that's where Snider will kill you. And if we get that, then I think we're going to have a pretty good ball game that may go right down to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Carroll won this one last year, 28-21.
Yep.
In week 2 in the old format of the SAC schedule. So this now is week 5 with a week 3 of the SAC slate, and certainly a big one out at Spooler. We'll be there with the 1380 crew, and it should be a fun one, Coach. And
absolutely.
Just a reminder for everybody to, stay up to date with us on all of our social media channels. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever you're calling it. You can watch all of our shows on YouTube as well. And of course, our website that we've just kind of started this season, the Upon Further Review, sac.com for more information and different places that you could find our audio and video versions of this podcast. We do it every Wednesday night, Coach, and this has been another fun one. Thank you so much to Kyle Booher, the head coach of the New Haven Bulldogs, and Kasey Kolkum, the coach of the Heritage Patriots, for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody at Spooler Stadium for the Carroll Snider game. And Coach, we'll see you on Friday night. It should be another exciting one.
Absolutely. We'll be there.
All right. We'll see everybody next week. Enjoy this week of high school football wherever you're headed, and we'll see you next week on Upon Further Review.